Hi there, Heather Steves here, and today I want to share with you my final process video in my Modville My Crush book. So this is page 43 and 44. So the reason for our visit out east was to participate in a world record setting event for the largest family reunion with the last name of Steves. So I had pulled out this craft page from earlier in the book that had "for the record" on it, and I really wanted to use it on this particular photo layout. So I'm actually using some mix-in papers here as well, and I'm using a sketch that you see here, and that's what I'm basing this layout on. So I'm putting my photos onto the papers, and then I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna add them into my book. So here I realized after I attached this photo and mat down that I actually needed to trim the lagoon paper. So I had to get my handy dandy Cricut scraper and remove that and then trim the lagoon paper down so that it was the right size for the layout. So now that I have my photos on these two mats, I need to add that to my page, and as I rip this one out, it makes it a little bit easier to do this, but I need to punch the holes in those papers so that they sit properly in my book. So I kind of realized after I probably should have had the lagoon piece a little bit longer. It would have given me a little bit more of like the gutter there, but it still works. I kind of played with it and I checked it, and I'm just playing around with my cinch here to make sure that I have it positioned where I want it. I've done both pieces of the lagoon because they're going to be on both sides of the layout, and then I just go ahead with my scissors and I just snip a slot in where the holes are so that I can then add it back into my page. So I'm just attaching it down. I use a fair amount of glue just to make sure that it's stuck there, but I have actually added other pieces and pages in that were still attached into the book, and I didn't use the glue, like the wet glue there like I did, and they're fine. So you can see I just poking that all in, and then I'm taking my other side and I'm basically doing the same thing, but because I didn't attach the lagoon stripe there initially, I'm gonna have to attach it and then re-punch it, and that proves a little bit more difficult, so it's always better to do it all at one time and then everything lines up properly. So I'm just kind of playing around here, getting my measurements accurate and the way that I want them. And of course I realize, oh, I should have trimmed the paper first now that I put the adhesive on it. So I need to take all the adhesive off, and then I'm gonna attach the photo first and do the trimming and make sure that everything lines up nicely. So now I'm going to punch the other holes in the top pattern paper there, and the cinch has a little knob there that you push down and put into the hole so that you can line things up, but it didn't work out so well. So anyway, probably would have been better just to take the hole punch and do it right from the beginning, but it is a little bit of a different size. But anyway, things are a little bit off, but it's underneath the coil and it's not as noticeable, so I'm not really too worried about it. So now that I'm putting that little piece on the left side, I realize that, oh, this big red image is going to be visible and it doesn't really suit my layout. So anyway, I'm just gonna measure things up. I grabbed a piece of craft cardstock from my stash, and I'm gonna go ahead and use the cinch again and punch that so that I can add it and cover up that that red image, and then my layout will look nice and cohesive. So you can see that this time that I didn't add any of the liquid adhesive because it's really not overly necessary, and there's no way that I could do that with the page being inside, and it would just complicate things tremendously. And so you see how easy it is for me to just cover that up. And now I'm going to move on to adding some little pattern paper to the side there to follow along with my pattern. I played around with some different options that I have, and I end up settling on this, I think it's chocolate fundamentals cardstock that's from quite some time ago, but it matches really nicely with the rest of the layout. So I wanted to add a little something underneath that chocolate paper, and so I pulled out this, I don't know, it's lacy, plasticky stuff that I had in my stash. I don't even remember where it came from, probably the dollar store or something. But the color-wise, it really matches perfectly with the lagoon. So I'm going to add that underneath as well once I get all these papers attached. So now that I have the lagoon colored lace piece put on there, I realized that I had put this other piece on upside down. So I had intentionally cut it specifically so that those circles would line up. And you might notice on the left side when I put that trim down, you don't see the white circles in it. I lined up the little straight line along the bottom of the brown, so the brown's on the little top piece. Anyway, hopefully you can kind of see that. So I just switched that around, and I used my Cricut scraper there just to tuck in the little edge of the lace piece. So I wanted to mimic the circles of the For the Record print on the right side of the layout. So I pulled out a couple of stamp sets, B1517, which is Go Far, which has that little Say Cheese circle, and then B1431, the Real Life, which has this little viewfinder image. And I'm just playing around with those, trying to decide what exactly I want to do. And then I'm also finding my circle thin cuts that would best match. So I think even both of these images actually coordinate with one of the Cricut cartridges from Close to My Heart, but they're just circles, so it really is just a matter of finding a circle that matches. And I just wasn't in the mood to pull up my Cricut and pick that size circle, so I just played with what I had, and you can see that it's been a little bit of trial and error there, trying to get exactly what I want. So I really like the look of the stamp on the pattern paper. So it's not something that I think of very often, but this is a very simple pattern paper. And so it just really looked nice to have the stamped image on that. And so that's what I ended up settling on. And then I just cut out the larger circle in the craft. Even though the craft is going to be on top of the craft, it still gives a really nice look to my embellishment there. And so you see that I kept the little extra piece after I cut out the inside circle, and I'm playing around, maybe going to add that somewhere, but can't really decide what to do. So with the viewfinder, I decided again, I'm gonna stamp that on the pattern paper because I really, like I said, I like the look of that. I think it ties it in very nicely, and it looks just like, I don't know how you say, but just a fancier embellishment as opposed to it just being on plain paper. So same thing, I'm going to go ahead and cut a larger circle for the craft cardstock, but for this one I didn't have exactly the right size, and like I said, I didn't want to bother pulling out my Cricut, and so I just fussy cut it, and it looks just fine that way. So now that I have the two embellishments down, I'm just playing around with these little semicircles that I cut, and I finally give up. I'm like, no, I don't need to use them. I just didn't want to waste them, but they're not going to work, so I'm just going to leave them off. And instead, I'm going through my stash of bling, and I'm looking for some gems that I can put on here just to add a little bit more to the layout. I end up settling on a blue-ish that ties in really nicely with the lagoon, and I'm just going to add those on here to finish things off. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like, subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to ring the bell to be notified when I post more videos. Have a wonderful day.